Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Weissach, licensed clinical social worker with Charitable Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. We appreciate it very, very much. And you know, when we turn our attention, we like to find out what's going on in the legislation. There are very few people who are as passionate, as excited about what they do and giving us that information as Joe Orgeron. Joe, thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you very much, Keith. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Of course, State Representative for District 54, but passionate about everything Louisiana.
Everything related to my district, I do love.
I know that's right. I appreciate that.
Culture, coast,
everything.
Community,
right.
Energy.
Right, all of those things. And I know we rely on you very heavily for that, but there's a lot of things going on legislatively, you know, even before the session gets here in April, there's so much happening here at the start of the year, right?
Right. People know that, that the Louisiana legislature is, part-time. We pretty much meet for 2 or 3 months a year, usually in the spring. They always want to know, though, when you start up. And basically, you come back from Christmas break, New Year's break, and that's whenever your inbox really starts filling up. And the first thing is lots of invitations to lots of meetings. Mm-hmm. Pretty much, I would think any organization that gets money somehow, some way from the state is setting up a legislative luncheon or a lunch and learn to explain how they used last year's money and how they're going to be asking for more money and stuff like that.
The M word, right?
To justify.
This is what y'all did last year, but we need so much more this year, and this is why.
That's right. So right now, the inbox is filling up with a lot. I try to focus on the ones that I'm most familiar with, anything having to do with energy policy, coastal restorations, wildlife and fisheries, oil and gas, like the energy and things related to our area, transportation, for our infrastructure. So that's pretty much what I try to make those meetings and leave the things related to criminal justice to other people and medical issues. There are legislators who I lean on during the session that are more experts in those areas.
Right, because I mean, that's where you and your colleagues, it's so important for you guys to be able to communicate well and efficiently, because you can't really know everything about everything.
That's
There's no way to be able to do it. You got to be able to see those kinds of things that you're passionate about. And I love that. And I love the fact that people come to you and ask you about those kinds of things, about coastal restoration and about wildlife and fisheries and those things that are really impacting your areas, especially your district.
Well, in our particular area, it kind of bleeds into the realtors and the bankers and the insurance industry with all the problems post-Ida and things like that. So you learn a lot. So it's on-the-job training all the time.
And speaking of, from a legislative standpoint, how are we doing with regards to your district in the recovery efforts? Because we're continuing to recover.
Today, I mean, right now the problem is, I believe that post-Hurricane Ida, we had, of course, displaced families being in FEMA trailers, and then the state came in with the Ida sheltering. FEMA has this deal where if a certain amount of time, 18 months have passed, and you haven't found a place to reside, that you could start renting. The freebie goes away, but you could start renting. But it seems that the people that have taken the Louisiana Ida sheltering trailer program are learning that there isn't that option. The state's basically trying to basically get you out of the trailers. So I'm hearing a lot from constituents right now that are making an honest effort to find a new place to rent, but what they're realizing is the limited places that are currently available to rent for them are pretty much out of their price range. So they're seeing people that were in FEMA trailers moving out, and they're wanting to know, why can't I take that empty FEMA trailer and pay a rent on it? And whenever you're talking about state government and federal government, it gets very, very complex. So that's what we're helping people with a bit right now.
Well, and quite frankly, all of those people, and I can attest to it as well. My home took 2/3 more to replace than it did to build. And that's because of all of the problems with getting supplies, with getting the labor. All of those things are so much more expensive. And I think that that's kind of the case with these rental properties as well.
Probably so.
Yeah, and so people are just seeing it's much more difficult to be able to do that. Now, you're also being called into some of these subcommittee meetings, right?
Correct.
Where you're having to kind of meet with your different subcommittees about where we are and what we're doing kind of last year, this year.
The Ways and Means Committee that I sit on has a subcommittee that was stood up to basically look at the competitiveness of Louisiana on the Gulf Coast as compared to Texas on one side and Florida on the other side, both without any state income tax.
Okay.
Making, whenever you hear people fleeing California or New York City, they're basically moving to places like Texas, Florida, and Tennessee, also with no state income tax. And this committee is basically looking at all the ins and outs, all the taxes that Louisiana has, tax codes, all the credits that we give, the refunds and credits on the tax side, and trying to simplify it and trying to see if there is a path to continue to lower, because we actually did a small lowering of state income tax in Louisiana last year, but to continue the process of moving it down to make us more competitive.
Yeah, and because we want to attract more people to come.
Absolutely.
Right?
I had mentioned it the last time I was here that, Louisiana at one point in time had 8 congressmen that went to Washington, and now we're down to 6.
6, right.
So and if the next census is any indication of the last one, we may be down to 5, which we don't want. So
no, we don't.
We want to reverse that trend, and we're working hard in the state to do that.
We want to go back to 8 because we want to have the people to represent that number, but we also want to have the representatives with a bigger number to fight for what Louisiana needs, like you do with the passion that you have for not only your district but Louisiana as a whole.
And I got to give it up. The congressional delegation we currently have in Washington, with the Steve Scalise, Gary Graves, Clay Higgins, and Julia Letlow, Mike Johnson, even Troy Carter. We have a great contingency,
and they're working on that. And one of those things you're talking about, how the different entities and how things impact the people in Louisiana, in South Louisiana, in your district especially. Hurricanes affect us, but hurricanes affecting us always leads us to think about coastal restoration and what we need to do about that, and making sure that we're thinking about those kinds of things.
There's
and resiliency.
Yes. Right now there's a lot of projects going on. Yes, I'll start kind of like in the Grand Isle side. There's a 4-phase process going on for Grand Isle to build back the beach and get it back, the beach in ship shape post Ida. The first phase was doing some jetty work that was already placed on the west end of the island. The second phase is to protect the chanière on the north side of the bridge.
Right.
That work is currently underway right now, as well as phase 3, which is basically to repair the burrito levee, as we call it, on the dune.
On the dune, right.
And the Army Corps of Engineers working late into the night right now to get that done and keep that on schedule.
Oh, wow.
The fourth phase is, David Cormedale, Mayor Cormedale's longtime wish to have rocks put along the rest of the beach side.
Oh, okay.
And that probably will take another year to get that project, that fourth and final segment, done.
Right.
But
and it fortifies the island better than it is right now, because we need it on the beach side, because that's where we start losing all of that protected area.
Our area is unique that we do have the only inhabited barrier island in Louisiana. Tourist destination, ecotourism, everything else, and it's important that we keep it active and we keep access to it.
Right.
And that with that you come back a ways, and if you've been to Grand Isle lately, you know that between Fouchon and Chanière or Elmas Island, a lot of rock fortification on the side of the highway. A great project done by Entergy. Hats off to them for doing that.
And a great job of protecting that road.
Absolutely.
For Ida.
That's right.
And it talks about the value of those rocks and what they do.
And, as a legislator, you get a once-a-year opportunity to put something in your district on the radar for DOTD to look at as a possible project down the road. And, I know that whenever the elevated highway between Golden Meadow and Fouchon was being done, originally, early on, the people of Grand Isle thought they would get an elevated highway all the way there.
That's right.
Even though that's not going to happen.
We knew that was a pipe dream.
Right, but elevating that highway, they got dips in that highway that right now, whenever a storm comes over, there's always a low spot that really stops the traffic or closes the road. And if it was all done at whatever a particular, pick a level.
Right.
And I think the level of the new bridges at Elmer's Island and Thunder Bayou, those brand new little 3 bridges that they did, if they were take all the low spots and build them up to that level all the way between the end of the elevated highway and the Grand Isle Bridge. It would work better because some of those low spots or the tight curve areas is where the road got eroded for Ida with the storm surge passing over. So it's important to get that project done. So I added that onto the DOTD project list.
Okay.
Additionally, moving back, we of course have the elevated highway that's going through a spurt of growth right now in Lower Golden Meadow. If you pass on the 4-lane on your way out, you see all the work being done. There's actually a hole in our 18-foot levee now on the south end, purposely put there in order to put a fortified area where the bridge, where the elevated highway will go over.
Okay, it'll cross over that.
To all the people of my district, I could tell you that James Construction started it on December 1st, the first day after hurricane season, so that they could finish by hurricane season. So it's important.
For June 1.
And they're on schedule, and they're moving. The T-wall will be up, and the levee will be back to protecting Lower Lafourche, and James Construction will continue to build the elevated highway at 22-foot elevation over the levee.
Over that 18-foot levee.
Yeah, so that's an important one. We're continuing with Morganza to Gulf.
Right.
Kind of just came back from a luncheon where that was being the primary topic.
Okay.
And that basically stretches all the way from the western extents of Terrebonne in Gibson all the way around. Through Homanave, making it utilizable with the lock at the Bubba Dove floodgate, all the way to basically in La Rose, on the eastern end of La Rose, and eventually putting a sector gate there to protect from storm surge coming down the intracoastal and flooding La Rose and Lockport and areas.
Right. And just being careful about what those locks mean, and locking those in one area, got to realize how that's going to affect another area.
That's some of the conversations I had with Reggie Dupree and Dwayne Bourgeois and Wendell Curall has been, there will be a day once we have all the protection that we have, and we're going to have probably a consolidated system of coordinating, knowing for a particular storm path who needs to start closing first, who allows, it's going to be complicated. It's going to have, there's more boat traffic here, so that has to be delayed to the last
how
minute
that's done.
And stuff like that.
But I will say, I will echo again, I've said this on TV probably 20 times if I've said it once. That is one of the areas where I think that we have been most progressive in working together across parish lines about coordination for that. So Terrebonne and Lafourche and the surrounding parishes have done a phenomenal job, not only of being able to put those in place with monies that we've taxed, but also working together to make that work. I expect that to go seamless like it has to this point with getting Morganza to the Gulf Road.
I'll just say in Baton Rouge, I've seen how other levee districts fight on their neighboring levee districts for resources, whereas we're blessed to have all of our three working together, Terrebonne and Lower and Upper Lafourche.
It's awesome. We appreciate it. All of those things affect water flow and how water comes and goes, but we've really seen some of that impact to wildlife and fisheries. And they've had to make some changes here about how we can maintain and keep the fisheries where we need them, and there's some recent changes.
Yeah, I'll get to those changes, but first I got to give a shout out for our state management of the red snapper.
Oh, that's right.
That was something that was federally controlled, and it came down to. I mean, what it really I found out ended up being is the data collection, the data processing, and finally making the policies was such a bureaucratic process that they literally didn't have time within 1 year in the federal government to do it. So they would make us have 8-day seasons, snapper seasons, 10-day or less. Crazy. And once it got controlled by the state government, and now we have the weekend starting at Labor Day all the way to Memorial Day or vice versa. But basically the last report was that we had like almost I think 80 days of red snapper fishing. So it's a well-maintained fishery.
Right.
And even though we went to like a 101% of quota this year, and they're going to take that extra off of next year, but next year's number it's getting bigger. So so next year, even though we're having to pay back for the year before, we actually get to take more red snapper next year.
Right.
Now,
because of the volume.
Yeah. Now, of course, Wildlife and Fisheries is currently trying to enact some changes to trout, speckled trout, spotted sea trout that they've been doing quite for some time now. And of course, COVID and Hurricane Ida put delays on it. But we're actually probably going to come up to a time where, in order for those regulations to go in permanently, they have to ask for whether or not the legislators want to have an oversight committee meeting. And my understanding is that being signaled that that there's enough interest to have an oversight committee meeting to see it. And I know that my constituents almost
exclusively,
I would
right?
say almost exclusively. I'd say 10 to 1 say that they would like to see that. So that's one. Another one that I've kind of worked on is that in hearing of the proposed changes to the trout fishery and the limits is the redfish stock assessment just came out. And it's not as healthy as they would like to see it. So they're starting to toy around and propose ideas of what they call changing the slot. The slot is right now we could go from 16 inches to 27 inches and 1 over 27. And that slot between 16 to 27, and possibly consider changing it to like 18 to 25, be the where you could do the take. And getting rid of the bull red take, and it's all just talk right now on the redfish. But I've teamed up with some of the organizations that have done tagging of fish, of various species of sport fish, and looked at possibly doing restocking programs that may not have any direct financial impact to the state, but be kind of recreational fisher funded restocking programs. And unfortunately, at this moment, the Wildlife and Fisheries basically denied us our permit to start a new. They're worried that by granting a permit and starting a new program of redfish restocking, that we might give mixed signals. Like that would be the solution, so we wouldn't have to do any regulations. But we're going to keep pushing it, though. I think it wouldn't have any harm to have. I mean, Florida has it, Texas has it.
And those two things can be mutually exclusive.
Absolutely. And they're basically hanging their hat on. We don't see any scientific data. Whereas we've kind of laid out that, we would have the big papa, the big mom, and the big dad be genetically fingerprinted so that we would know what all the species are. And that would wouldn't be tagging with physical tags or little magnetic chips or anything. It would be, you would just send a piece of the fish in, and genetically we could tell whether or not that was one of the release hatchlings or later a spawn, something, a fish that came from one of those release hatchlings.
Wow, that's amazing to be able to know how to do that.
But my place on that Natural Resources Committee is one of my favorite committee assignments. I really like being. Of course, we're the heart of the sportsman's paradise in Lafourche and Terrebonne in the Bayou region.
That's exactly right.
To me, it's important that we hang out in there, that I'm well tuned.
And tuned in to know what we need to do. And people need to continue to tune in to find out those updates. Some last thoughts about where we're going this year, 2023 here legislatively.
I got a couple of bills. This is a fiscal session, so we have unlimited number of fiscal bills, and a limited. You could only have 5 non-fiscal bills. And everybody gets stacked up with possibly the non-fiscal ones. One that I might have to do is there's this statute that. The donation of a particular piece of property to become a state park has to be of a large size.
Certain number.
And there are some things in the workings right now where Lafourche Parish might get its first state park.
Wow.
But it's smaller than the prescribed amount, so it might need an override.
Okay, gotcha. We'll see how that goes. Always appreciate your time. Thank you so very much. Again, Happy New Year, and we look forward to updates from you when we get to in session.
Love to give the updates.
Appreciate it. All right.
Appreciate the time.
You got it. All right, guys, that'll do it for us here for this particular segment. Don't go anywhere. A lot more local programming here on HTV.